Thank you. Ladies and gentlemen, we would like to welcome our dearest brother, Tuan Haji Muhammad Sabu, to our conference here. Ahlan wa sahlan ya akhi. Alhamdulillah, before we proceed to our keynote address by our brother, Sri Anwar Ibrahim, let me share with our two distinguished guests today that for the last two sessions that we have been here, we have our speakers and delegates who come from all over the world to be here to share with us their expertise, their knowledge, their experiences on this issue of liberating Masjid Al-Aqsa and defending the rights of the oppressed Ummah. Alhamdulillah, this reflects the willingness of us Muslims to be together on the term of Ummah Wahidah, irrespective of our differences, irrespective of our political inclination, irrespective of our differences in school of thought, mazahib, and others. Alhamdulillah, now I would like to call upon Dr. Rosli Yaakob, the Managing Director of Harakah. It's a very well-known newspaper in Malaysia, to be with our guest today, that is Sri Anwar Ibrahim, for our keynote address. Brother Moderator, besides having Dr. Sri Anwar Ibrahim to deliver his keynote speech, we would like also him to launch two books written by our committee members immediately after the talk. Thank you. I'll pass the mic to you, Brother Rusli.
Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh. Bismillahirrahmanirrahim. Alhamdulillah rabbil alamin wassalatu wassalamu ala asyrafil anbiya'i wal mursalin sayyidina Muhammadin wa ala alihi washabbihi ajma'in wa ba'd. Subhanaka la 'ilma lana illa ma 'allamtana innaka antal alimul hakim. Rabbi shrah li sadri wa yassir li amri wahlul 'uqdatam min lisani yafqahu qawli. We are happy this morning to have with us a very distinguished speaker, Yang Berhormat Datuk Sri Anwar Ibrahim, who is the leader of the opposition party, People's Party or Pakatan Rakyat of Malaysia. Datuk Sri Anwar Ibrahim will speak on role of regional political unity for the is a technique of people internationally. Just to mention a few things for to share. Respected Brother Chairman Terusri, esteemed rekan-rekan pimpinan penyelenggara dari peserta ulama dan juga dari Persidangan Antarabangsa, termasuk juga Azmi, Ustaz Mawang, Ustaz Ghani, Kepala Presiden PAS, sahabat saya Muhammad Sabu, tetamu-tamu kehormat yang saya muliakan, seperti mana disebut, rencana ini kesamaan untuk terus meningkat kesedaran rakyat dan menuntut perubahan di peringkat dasar dalam negara dan luar negara untuk menegakkan keadilan bagi semua. Itu perlu kewajiban. Umat Islam menyaksikan malapetaka yang dahsyat, tetapi satu isu yang menyentuh hati nurani kita sejak awal, tragedi utama manusia Palestin, kedudukan yang tidak tertentu di
Al-Aqsa masih mendera rakyat. Sebab itu saya anggap persidangan ini dan inisiatif ini sangat bermakna. Dan saya semua kalangan, dari semua kecenderungan politik, faham untuk menjalankan usaha, menumpu perhatian, mengangkat kesedaran, dan memastikan satu isu yang menyentuh perasaan hati nurani dan yang menyaksikan derita yang sekian lama. Tidak boleh kita bergantung kepada dunia luar, tidak boleh kita mengharapkan kepada kuasa-kuasa besar, karena akhirnya sejarah Palestin membuktikan bahawa umat Islam sendiri mesti berdiri menjadi tunggal yang boleh memperjuang dan membela nasib rakyat Palestin manakala ditindas dan didera oleh rejim Zionis Israel dengan dukungan kuasa barat, khususnya Amerika Syarikat. Excellencies, ladies and gentlemen, it's a profound pleasure that I join you here today. But Jose has been kind, but it's true. One of the earlier struggles that we understood when we were young, was students, was to highlight the plight, struggle, sufferings of the Palestinian people. We know no ideology, no difference in terms of mazhab, no political differences. Our focus was justice for the Palestinian people. I remember in 1973, one of the first major demonstrations that I led was against the United States, and we went to the embassy. One of the first few occasions we got arrested. We didn't know any Palestinian leader. At that time, only Yasser Arafat. We don't know about the context of the struggle, but we know that injustice has been perpetrated against the Palestinian people. Only later, by the way, incidentally, that because of that demonstration, the AIA, which was the building that hosted the embassy, decided that they will not allow US embassy to be stationed or rented at the AIA building all over the world. So we had a small role there. By 1983, I was fortunate to attend the first major conference of the PLO, chaired by then Yasser Arafat, where I got to be directly involved and to know them personally and to listen to the views of all the various groups and factions within the PLO. We invited then Yasser Arafat and the older leaders prior to Hamas, Farouk Adoumi and the rest, and we even had organized rallies, including at the universities here, first major public rallies to support the Palestinian cause. I was fortunate recently to meet Khalid Mash'al, to listen to him and the initiatives taken, and there was practically a day after the attempt, initiative to meet, to resolve differences with Fatah, because the general feeling of the Muslims is that we can only fight the aggressors with a united front. The rest is, of course, for the Palestinian leaders to decide and determine. But what have we learned from the tragedy of Palestine? I want to encapsulate a phrase used by a Palestinian Christian, Edward Said, whom I had great admiration for his steadfast, strong position vis-a-vis Palestine, and his refusal to support any peace initiative with Israel under pressure by the United States if the issue of Palestine, the rights of Palestinians are not resolved. That is what he termed as politics of dispossession. There's a central issue in the issue of Palestine. People make it into various interpretations, but they're dispossessed of their basic right as a citizen, as a human being, from their right. This issue seems to be of danger when we discuss with many Westerners, Europeans, or Americans. I used to teach at the Georgetown University, and of course, in a very series of dialogues all over the premier institutions, from Harvard to Stanford to Georgetown to Johns Hopkins, students were alerted, and invariably, because of my statement on the Palestinian cause, this question will be raised. Why is it that Fatah refused to recognize Israel? Why is it that you have violence perpetrated by the Palestinians against Israel? Well, they missed a basic point, I told them. The issue is again dispossession. Your land, your house, your property, your basic right as a human being has been robbed from you. And you talk about the repercussions, reaction towards this gross injustice perpetrated. So I think that discourse, that language discourse must be made very clear. In the media, in international media, now you talk about bombs or some strikes, one or two, including at times we become very disgusted because of another attack by the Palestinians, by the Israelis against Palestine. I think we must always remind ourselves, political leaders, civil society, and NGOs, and the media, that the central issue of Palestine, which cannot be resolved unless the issue of dispossession this has been very consistent in this. Now I want to give you a small fact, because we have been asked to raise support and funds for the Persidangan cause. But we must not fail to realize that the continued siege of Gaza, which Prime Minister Tayyip Erdogan referred to as a prison, okay, imprisonment of the entire Gaza, has cost 35% of the annual GDP, which means an average of 3.4 billion US dollars lost due to the restrictions alone. Now, we can raise, and although our focus is to get a united resolve, you also must not ignore the fact that if governments, if societies are not dictated by the principle of haqq, to reject batil, to promote justice, it's very difficult for us to expect them to support a just cause for the Palestinians. That is why we have all the resources in the world. We still have the richest states in the world, but we cannot even afford to give decent food and medicine to the sufferings of our people, be it in Palestine or close to the borders, the Rohingya Muslims in Burma. So we find conflicts after conflicts from Afghanistan to Syria to Palestine, but complete abandonment of the principles of justice because the failure of Muslims, particularly leadership, to take a principled stand, independent principled stand against aggression and injustice all over the world. But this, to my mind, is relevant. You can talk at infinity. The cows come home about the plight of the Palestinian cause. We can try and raise a few million here and there, but we cannot deny the fact that unless the issue of leadership and governance in Muslim countries is resolved, people who have that empathy, not only about the Palestinians, not because Al-Aqsa is there, not because they are Arabs or Palestinians, but because of the principle of justice, of haqq against batil, that we as Muslims have been trained as part of our faith to try and resolve. That is my position, because contrary to those who have been talking about the solution to the Palestinian cause, I happen to be just the last few days and with Prime Minister, with President Al-Aqsa. It's interesting enough, although I was talking about my court case or Malaysian issues, or bilateral relations, Turkey and Malaysia, but we came back without fail to discuss the fundamental problematic crisis and tragedy of the world. That is the Palestinian question. And our common stand is again the issue of dispossession. And the fact of the failure of, don't talk about the failure of America. I mean, my colleagues always say that I am a bit soft. I'm not soft on the United States. But people tend to use this as a pretext to cover the crimes that they commit. I remember when we were talking about Abu Ghraib prisons, how much we condemn the Americans. I was addressing a crowd in Doha, and there was a strong representation from the Palestinians, the international conference. And there was this unanimous condemnation of the United States over the treatment of Abu Ghraib prison. And I, of course, I said, yes, I endorse. I have no doubt about that. The United States must be condemned for the treatment of Iraqis in Abu Ghraib prison. Then I continue. What about our prisons? Of course, the Arab delegates were not too happy. But where is the Islamic consistent stand if you talk about justice and principles and morality, and you condemn others, which is right, but silent and muted when it comes to atrocities in our own backyard? I'm not talking my personal experience because, as you know, I was assaulted to near death in our lockup under police custody. But this is small compared to what my Palestinian brothers and sisters have to endure in Israeli prison. But we will have a strong, a moral high ground if we say, look, this is our democracy, our justice, this is how we treat our prisoners if we have to. This is our courts, which is independent, respecting the rule of law. This is our media, which is free to even criticize our leaders. That is why we condemn the West or Israel for the atrocities committed against us. Half the problem inflicted upon our brothers in Palestine can be resolved. Wallah al-Azim, I am convinced if leaders in the Muslim world have that courage, resolve, not corrupt, and again, committed to fight and struggle for justice. I brought brothers, particularly in Indonesia, which has been extremely active and vigilant in their struggle, in their campaign, in support of the Palestinian cause, and I think, consistent with the theme of this short lecture, is to call upon our friends in the region, which is the Ghuraba, far distant land from the Arab world in the Middle East, where the consciousness of the Palestinian cause must be there. But I think other than that, just a public sentiment, it is also a clear understanding that no change, yes, political rhetoric, yes, happy when you condemn the Western powers, but believe me, no change, no meaningful, effective change unless unless we are prepared to ensure that we form just societies, just governments with clear policies to uphold the principles of law and justice. And this is what we see as a tragedy of the Palestinian people. No law, no justice, complete dehumanization, and people are silent. I was talking to Chibu Azmi, which you referred to, the statement by the Deputy Minister of Israel condemning Palestinians as probably half human beings. Can you imagine if there's a Muslim leader, a Muslim minister in any part of the world, from Nigeria to Indonesia, saying that, you know, not not fit to be called humans, immediately there will be international condemnation. Now, Israeli leaders mentioned that even the European Union has been quite muted, and they talk about human rights and principles of human rights. Not only European Union, Muslim governments and leaders and foreign ministers are still sleeping without any sense of anger or feeling enraged when people are abused and insulted. There is a problem with our faith, with our akhlaq, in our form of character or shakhsiyah when it comes to questions of justice. So thank you again for this opportunity. I chose not to read and bore you with the details about years and dates, because those who are here are more conversant on the subject. But I think I appeal to you to come back to the principle, the core of the message, and that is the commitment to our faith, and that the faith must translate in terms of coherent, consistent policies upholding justice. Wassalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh.
Thank you, Dato' Sri Anwar Ibrahim, for a very inspiring speech. The speech was kind of self-explanatory. I don't have to repeat point by point, but perhaps some highlight would be sufficient. One of the main points that he mentioned is we should not pin hope on the United Nations or the superpower or the West to solve the issue of the Palestinian people. It is the Muslims themselves should take the initiative to resolve our own problem. That, I think, the major point, one of the major points raised by Dato' Sri Anwar Ibrahim. For that reason, it is extremely important for we Muslims to come together as a nation, as an ummah, and we must ourselves chart the action plan for us to, inshallah, within a given time frame, to recapture Baitul Maqdis and to bring dignity to our brothers, the Palestinians. That is one. Secondly, the major he termed it as the politic of dispossession. It means the Palestinian people is being denied of basic right. Their land was robbed. They are denied of clean water, of basic food, medicine, and so on and so forth. This problem requires urgent attention from the Muslim brothers all over the world. As such, inshallah, in the afternoon session, we are going to dwell on drawing up the action plan for the liberation of Baitul Maqdis, inshallah. I end the session and would like to hand over this floor to the chairman to the moderator of the session, inshallah. Thank you very much. Wabillahi taufiq wa hidayah. Wassalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh.
Thank you, Brother Dr. Rusli. Ladies and gentlemen, we are very happy today as well because we have another distinguished guest to be with us today. That is our Yang Muhammad Nurul Izzah Anwar. Alhamdulillah. Well, we now come to the next agenda, which is launching 2 books written by our MAPIM committee members. We therefore would like to invite our guest, Tuan Haji Muhammad Sabu, Nurul Izzah Anwar, Ustaz Abdul Ghani Shamsuddin, Ustaz Ahmad Awang, and Cikgu Muhammad Azmi Abdul Hamid to be on the stage for the launching of 2 books written by our MAPIM committee members. Tafadhalu mashkura. Ladies and gentlemen, we have 2 books written by our MAPIM committee members. The first book entitled Daulah Thayyibah, written by Cikgu Muhammad Azmi Abdul Hamid and Ustaz Zulkifli Ibrahim. They are the president and also the deputy president of MAPIM. With great honor, we have our Yang Muhammad Dato' Sri Anwar Ibrahim to launch these 2 books. The other book is entitled Bumi Yang Dijanjikan, written by Dr. Muhammad Fauzi Zakaria, also the committee member of MAPIM, Majlis Persidangan Islam Malaysia. It's a very strong ties to show that we are very, very strong brotherhood. Thank you, Dr. Sri Anwar Ibrahim. Thank you to all our guests. Oh yeah, another title. We welcome Dr. Muhammad Fauzi Zakaria, who wrote a book entitled Bumi Yang Dijanjikan, The Promised World, the Promised Land. All the distinguished guests, we're going to have our photo session on the stage. Please remain on the stage for a while. Busy. Ladies and gentlemen, we may have 15 minutes break for our coffee morning. This is a bit late. And please resume to the hall after 15 minutes. And for all the guest speakers, please proceed for our press conference. Thank you.